Hello dear friends, it's once again very hearty and warm welcome. Dear friends, in our today's lecture, we are going to study two important topics, that is autosomal inheritance and then sex-linked inheritance by considering different examples, by considering the inheritance of different characters. So immediately, let us start the study of first topic of this lecture, that is autosomal inheritance. Autosomal inheritance. Now all of you are known the meaning of autosome. Earlier I have already told you, in human being each and every somatic cell that is general body cell, diploid general body cell shows presence of 23 pairs of chromosomes, and out of these 23 pairs of chromosomes, 22 pairs of chromosomes are responsible to control general body characters. General body characters, that is somatic characters except sex, and therefore these 22 pairs of chromosomes which are responsible to control the general body characters, somatic characters except sex, are called as autosomes. And we know that the remaining one pair of chromosomes is responsible to control the sex, that is sex chromosomes, about which we have already studied, XX and XY. Now I told you the meaning of autosomes. The autosomes are responsible to control the general body characters, and that's why the genes present on autosomes are called as autosomal genes, and the general body characters controlled by the autosomal genes are known as autosomal characters. Listen, what does it mean? Autosomal characters means what? The characters which are controlled by the autosomal genes. And what are autosomal genes? The genes present on autosomes and responsible to control the general body characters, somatic characters except sex. And the inheritance, that is the transmission of such autosomal characters from generation to generations, is simply known as autosomal inheritance. Meaning is very simple. I am going to tell you in Marathi. I said that मी आता असं म्हटलं की ह्यूमन बीइंगच्या प्रत्येक जनरल बॉडी सेल मध्ये 23 पेअर्स ऑफ क्रोमोझोम्स प्रेझेंट असतात. अर्थात ह्या ज्या 23 पेअर्स आहेत गुणसूत्रांच्या क्रोमोझोम्सच्या, त्यापैकी 22 पेअर्स हे जनरल बॉडी कॅरेक्टर्स, सर्वसाधारण शारीरिक गुणधर्म नियंत्रित करतात एक्सेप्ट सेक्स, आणि म्हणून त्यांना ऑटोझोम्स असं म्हणतात. आणि आपण आधी शिकलो की शेवटची 23rd पेअर ऑफ क्रोमोझोम्स, शेवटची एक जी जोडी आहे गुणसूत्रांची, that is responsible to determine the sex, and hence that pair is called sex chromosome. Now here the genes present on autosomes, अर्थात या ऑटोझोम्स वर जे जीन्स प्रेझेंट असतात त्यांना म्हटलं जातं ऑटोझोमल जीन्स. आणि या ऑटोझोमल जीन्स मार्फत जे कॅरेक्टर्स, जे गुणधर्म नियंत्रित केले जातात त्यांना म्हटलं जातं ऑटोझोमल कॅरेक्टर्स. अँड व्हेरी सिंपल, the transmission of autosomal characters from one generation to the next is known as autosomal inheritance. Now, these autosomal characters may be determined by either dominant genes or maybe by the recessive genes. Autosomal characters may be determined, may be controlled by autosomal dominant genes or maybe autosomal recessive gene. याचा अर्थ हे जे ऑटोझोमल कॅरेक्टर्स आहेत, जनरल बॉडी कॅरेक्टर्स आहेत, ते ऑटोझोम्स वर असणारे डॉमिनंट जीन पण नियंत्रित करतात किंवा काही रिसेसिव्ह जीन पण नियंत्रित करतात. लेट मी टेल यू एक्झाम्पल. सपोज द ऑटोझोमल dominant genes, autosomal dominant genes are responsible to control some traits like widow's peak, about which we are going to talk very soon. Second, Huntington's disease. These two characters, these two traits are the examples of autosomal dominant characters. Means these two traits are controlled by the autosomal dominant genes. While some of the autosomal characters, some of the general body characters are controlled, determined by recessive genes. Let me tell you the example. Autosomal recessive genes are responsible for a disorder phenylketonuria. It is one of the typical example of character controlled by autosomal recessive gene. In addition to that, sickle cell anemia, we have already discussed about it. Sickle cell anemia or even the cystic fibrosis. These are also the disorders or traits controlled by autosomal recessive gene. Now, we people have to study only single example of character controlled by autosomal dominant gene, that is widow's peak, and then one example of character controlled by autosomal recessive gene, that is phenylketonuria. So first of all, let us talk about the widow's peak. First of all, let me tell you the meaning of widow's peak. A prominent V-shaped hairline on the forehead is described as widow's peak. Listen, a prominent V-shaped hairline on the forehead is described as widow's peak. Let me explain you. Consider, here is a face of some individual. These are the hairs. Just consider, and here is the forehead. Now, on the forehead, if there is a presence of such distinct V-shaped hairline, here with the help of yellow chalk, I am going to show the hairs. You can see, in this individual, a distinct V-shaped hairline is seen on the forehead, exactly at the middle. It is known as the widow peak. Now, this widow peak, this trait is controlled by autosomal dominant gene W. अर्थात हे जी ट्रेट आहे विडोज पीक, हे नियंत्रित करण्याचं कार्य ऑटोझोमल डॉमिनंट जीन करतो, that is suppose capital W, and therefore the individual with either homozygous dominant gene or we can say heterozygous condition show the widow's peak, and the individuals show absence of widow peak. It means in some of the individuals such V-shaped hairline is not seen and only there is a straight hairline. On the forehead. You can see here is no widow's peak, and so this absence of widow peak or straight hairline is due to recessive gene. That is small w. So individual with genotype capital W, that is homozygous dominant gene, as well as the individual with capital W and small w, that is heterozygous condition, also shows widow peak, and the individuals in which both the genes are recessive, that is small w, they show straight hairline or we can say absence of widow peak. So here we have discussed what does it mean, widow pig, and which genes are responsible to control this trait. Now let us talk about second, that is phenylketonuria. Phenylketonuria. Phenylketonuria, it is inborn metabolic disorder. Inborn metabolic disorder. Inborn in the sense since birth, janmaza. It is a metabolic disorder, and this disorder is caused due to autosomal recessive gene. Remember, it is autosomal recessive gene. Just now we have studied about the widow's pig, and you know widow's pig, this trait is controlled by autosomal dominant gene, and here phenylketonuria, this trait is controlled by autosomal recessive gene. So obviously, when in any particular individual, if both the genes in pair are recessive, then in such individuals phenylketonuria, this disorder is seen. Due to this autosomal recessive gene, in that individuals there is no production, no synthesis of enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase enzyme. Due to autosomal recessive gene, there is no formation, no synthesis of phenylalanine hydroxylase enzyme. This enzyme is necessary for the conversion of amino acid phenylalanine into another amino acid tyrosine. हे जे एन्झाइम आहे फिनाइलअलॅनिन हायड्रॉक्सिलेज एन्झाइम, हे कशासाठी आवश्यक आहे? हे एन्झाइम फिनाइलअलॅनिन या अमायनो ऍसिडचं कन्व्हर्जन टायरोसिन या अमायनो ऍसिड मध्ये करण्यासाठी गरजेचं असतं. टायरोसिनला काय महत्त्व आहे ते आपल्याला कळणार आहे, बट देन अँड देन लेट मी टेल यू that tyrosine, this amino acid is necessary for the synthesis of one of the very important hormone, that is thyroxine. पुढे आपल्याला शिकायला मिळेल. थायरॉइड ग्लँड म्हणून एक एंडोक्राइन ग्लँड आहे, त्या थायरॉइड ग्लँड मार्फत थायरॉक्सिन नावाचं हार्मोन तयार केलं जातं, आणि ते थायरॉक्सिन हार्मोन तयार करण्यासाठी टायरोसिनची गरज असते. But I said just now, this enzyme is necessary for the conversion of amino acid phenylalanine into tyrosine. Now, if this enzyme is absent, phenylalanine cannot be converted into tyrosine. अर्थात ज्या वेळेला हे एन्झाइम नसेल त्यावेळेला फिनाइलअलॅनिनचं रूपांतर टायरोसिन मध्ये होणार नाही, and thus the phenylalanine amino acid goes on accumulating in the blood as well as in the CSF. This enzyme goes on accumulating in the blood and CSF. अर्थात हे जे अमायनो ऍसिड आहे हे रक्तामध्ये साचत जातं, त्याचं प्रमाण वाढत जातं, त्याचबरोबर CSF चं पण प्रमाण वाढत जातं. CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, about which we shall talk in very detail while discussing the structure of brain. पण आता पण मी सांगतो, the brain, human brain is surrounded by three protective membranous coverings. Human brain भोवती तीन संरक्षणात्मक आवरण असतात, त्यांना meninges असे म्हणतात. त्यांना नावे आहेत, jura mater, arachnoid mater, pia mater, that we shall study later on. Now, in between that membranes, ब्रेन भोवती असणारे हे जे आवरण आहे त्यांच्यामध्ये थोड्या थोड्या स्पेसेस असतात, आणि त्या स्पेसेस एका वॉटरी फ्लुइडने भरलेले असतात. त्या फ्लुइडला म्हटलं जातं cerebrospinal fluid. Now here, due to the absence of this enzyme, as amino acid phenylalanine is not converted into tyrosine, thus phenylalanine, it goes on accumulating in the blood as well as in the cerebrospinal fluid, and it adversely affects the development of brain. It adversely affects the development of brain as well as it may lead to the mental retardation. अर्थात काहीतरी mental disability ही त्याच्यामध्ये दिसू शकते. Now, the excess of phenylalanine, रक्तामध्ये वाढलेलं हे जे अमायनो ऍसिड आहे phenylalanine, that is excreted in urine. युरिनच्या स्वरूपात हे phenylalanine बाहेर पडत असतं, बाहेर टाकलं जातं. And the appearance of phenylalanine in urine is known as phenylketonuria. अर्थात याच कंडिशनला म्हटलं जातं phenylketonuria. Here urea, this word stands for the urine, and appearance of phenylalanine amino acid in urine is known as the phenylketonuria. So here we have discussed about two examples. First example, that is of widow's peak. That trait is controlled by autosomal dominant gene, and here second trait, second disorder, phenylketonuria, it is controlled by autosomal recessive gene. So here we have discussed about the autosomal inheritance. Now we have to study about the sex-linked inheritance. आता आपल्याला sex-linked inheritance चा अभ्यास करायचा आहे. Sex-linked inheritance. Dear friends, actually we people have came across about the term sex linkage, sex-linked inheritance in our previous lectures. But then and then let us talk briefly. All of you are known the genes present on the non-homologous parts of sex chromosomes are known as sex-linked genes. Let me write here. We all are known in human being there are two types of sex chromosomes such as the X chromosome and Y chromosome. Consider here is supposed to be X chromosome and Y chromosome, and we know that the X and Y chromosome, these are unidentical in their shape and size. Of course, some part of this X and Y chromosome show unidentical genes, and therefore that part is called non-homologous part. Here I have shown this non-homologous part of X and Y chromosome and this lower part as homologous part. Now we know the genes present on the non-homologous part, the genes present on non-homologous part of X chromosome as well as on the non-homologous part of Y chromosome are known as sex-linked genes. Sex-linked genes. As in human being there are two types of sex chromosomes, so obviously the sex-linked genes are of also two types, such as we can say X-linked genes and Y-linked genes. Very simple. X-linked genes means the genes which are present on the non-homologous part of X chromosome, and Y-linked genes means the genes which are present on the non-homologous part of Y chromosome, and the characters controlled by such sex-linked genes are known as sex-linked characters. As the sex-linked genes are of two types, therefore the sex-linked characters are of also two types, such as the characters controlled by X-linked genes are known as X-linked characters. X-linked characters. And the characters controlled by Y-linked genes are known as Y-linked characters. Y-linked characters. And the phenomenon of inheritance or transmission of such X-linked and Y-linked characters from parents to their progeny is known as sex-linked inheritance. अर्थात हे जे X-linked कॅरेक्टर आणि Y-linked कॅरेक्टर्स आहेत त्यांचं एका पिढीमधून पुढच्या पिढीमध्ये होणाऱ्या संक्रमणाला सेक्स-लिंक्ड इनहेरिटन्स म्हणतात. म्हणजे सेक्स-लिंक्ड इनहेरिटन्सचे पण आपण दोन प्रकार पाडू शकतो, सच as X-linked inheritance and Y-linked inheritance. X-linked inheritance means the transmission of X-linked characters from parents to the progeny, and Y-linked inheritance means the transmission of Y-linked characters. Now, we people have to study separately these two types of inheritance, such as X-linked inheritance and Y-linked inheritance. So let us talk about it. First of all, X-linked inheritance. X-linked inheritance. Just as I told you, X-linked inheritance is nothing but the transmission of X-linked characters which are controlled by X-linked genes. Let me tell you, in human being there are presence of about 60 X-linked genes. 60 X-linked genes. And these X-linked genes, these in recessive condition, are mostly responsible to develop different disorders. Try to understand. Human being मध्ये X क्रोमोझोमच्या नॉन होमोलॉगस रीजनवर जवळपास 60 जीन्स प्रेझेंट असतात ज्यांना आपण एक्स लिंक्ड जीन्स म्हणतो आणि हे जे एक्स लिंक्ड जीन्स आहेत ते रिसेसिव्ह कंडिशन मध्ये ह्यूमन बीइंग मध्ये वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारच्या डिसऑर्डर्स डेव्हलप करत असतात. से फॉर एक्झाम्पल द डिफरंट डिसऑर्डर्स डेव्हलप्ड ड्यू टू रिसेसिव्ह एक्स लिंक्ड जीन्स आर as hemophilia, say red green color blindness, then myopia, short sightedness, then muscular dystrophy. All these are the disorders seen in human being, and these disorders develop due to the recessive X-linked genes. Now these recessive X-linked genes express frequently in males. Listen carefully. These recessive X-linked genes frequently expresses in males. Why? Because we know that in male individual there is only single X chromosome, isn't it? In human male there is only single X chromosome, there is no other X chromosome, but we know the another sex chromosome in human male is Y, and that's why these recessive genes present on the non-homologous part of X chromosome have no dominant allele on Y chromosome to suppress the effect of recessive X-linked genes. Do you understand? अर्थात मेल इंडिव्हिज्युअल्स मध्ये आपल्याला माहिती आहे की एक्स क्रोमोझोम हा सिंगल डोसेज कंडिशन मध्ये आहे. याचा अर्थ एक्स क्रोमोझोम बरोबर दुसरा एक्स क्रोमोझोम नाहीये, त्या ठिकाणी जो दुसरा सेक्स क्रोमोझोम आहे तो वाय आहे. आणि हे जे एक्स लिंक्ड जीन्स आहेत वी नो दीज आर प्रेझेंट ऑन द नॉन होमोलॉगस पार्ट ऑफ एक्स क्रोमोझोम. मग समजा या ठिकाणी एखादा कुठला तरी स्मॉल सी हा एक्स लिंक्ड जीन आहे and it is responsible to develop the red green color blindness. मग याचा परिणाम सप्रेस करण्यासाठी या स्मॉल सी या रिसेसिव्ह एक्स लिंक्ड जीन्सचा इफेक्ट मास्क करण्यासाठी, त्याला सप्रेस करण्यासाठी, त्याचा इफेक्ट नलिफाय करण्यासाठी इथे कुठेही डॉमिनंट जीन प्रेझेंट नाही. आणि त्यामुळे आय सेड इन ह्यूमन मेल these X-linked characters, these disorders frequently appear in male individual, but in female individuals we know the X chromosomes are present in double dosage condition. Females मध्ये मात्र X chromosome हे double dosage condition मध्ये, अर्थात in female there are 2 X chromosome, and that's why in human female though in an allelic pair one gene is recessive and another gene is dominant, the effect or expression of this recessive gene is suppressed by allelic gene, dominant gene, and that's why in such females, in such heterozygous female, heterozygous means the female in which in that allelic pair one gene is dominant, another is recessive. मग अशा फिमेल मध्ये हा जो स्मॉल सी रिसेसिव्ह जीन आहे तो एक्सप्रेस होणार नाही, त्याचा इफेक्ट त्या ठिकाणी दिसणार नाही, त्याचं एक्सप्रेशन त्या फिमेल मध्ये दिसणार नाही. का? Because its effect is suppressed by the dominant gene. It means such heterozygous females, they appear phenotypically normal. Phenotypically अशा female normal दिसतील. म्हणजे त्यांच्यामध्ये समजा कलर ब्लाइंडनेस हा कॅरेक्टर ही ट्रेट appear होणार नाही. पण actually such females carry that small c gene, that is recessive gene for color blindness, and that's why such females with genotype capital C, small c, such heterozygous females are not said to be normal. They are not said to be normal. Such females are known as the carrier females. Why? Because these females carry the gene for that particular X-linked character. And so I said, in females there is less chance of expression of such X-linked disorders, while these X-linked disorders frequently expresses in male. That reason I told you. We people have to study about the inheritance of hemophilia, red-green color blindness after some time, maybe in next lecture. But first of all, we have to understand the meaning of X-linked inheritance. Now, come to the second, that is Y-linked inheritance. Meaning is simple. Inheritance of Y-linked characters. That is the transmission of Y-linked characters, Y-linked genes from parents to the progeny. Now what does it mean, Y-linked characters and Y-linked genes? Already I told you. Y-linked characters कशाला म्हणायचं, Y-linked genes कशाला म्हणायचं हे आपल्याला आधीच माहिती आहे. We know that the genes present on the non-homologous part of Y chromosome are known as the Y-linked genes, and the characters controlled by that Y-linked genes are known as the Y-linked characters. Now we know that Y chromosome is male chromosome. It is present exclusively in male individuals and absent in female individuals, and therefore the genes present on non-homologous part of Y chromosome are also called as the Hollandric genes. Just try to understand the meaning of this term. Hollandric. Actually here the spelling is H-O-L, Hollandric. I will say, just consider it as a W-H-O-L-E, whole. Whole means what? Entirely, पूर्णतः, संपूर्णतः. Andric, Andric stands for the male. It means these genes are exclusively male genes. These are purely male genes. Why? Because these genes, Y-linked genes, are present on non-homologous part of Y chromosome. ज्यांना आपण होलँड्रिक जीन्स म्हणतोय, अर्थात हे होलँड्रिक जीन्स म्हणजे काय? Y-linked जीन्स हे Y क्रोमोझोमच्या नॉन होमोलॉगस पार्टवर आहेत. अर्थात Y chromosome, we know it is present only in male, so these genes are also present only and only in male. Therefore they are called exclusively masculine genes, male genes, so Hollandric genes. I would like to tell you the example of character controlled by Hollandric genes, such as hypertrichosis. Second, ichthyosis. These are Y-linked characters. Okay, these are controlled by the Hollandric genes, Y-linked genes, and the transmission of these characters from one generation to the next, of course, from grandfather to the father, and from father to his son. This is nothing but the Y-linked inheritance, about which we are going to study separately by considering the example of hypertrichosis in next lecture. But here just we have to understand about the meaning of sex-linked inheritance and its types, X-linked inheritance and Y-linked inheritance. X-linked inheritance may be directly known as sex-linked inheritance. So here we have completed this topic. So let us stop here. All of you take great care of yourself, and bye.